Welcome home, guys! Behind me is an incredible loft in the center of Copenhagen in Denmark. It is located in Christianshavn, a really cool and upcoming quirky neighborhood in Copenhagen. The father of this designer is an artist, and in this video you will find out how that really influences this design. So stick to the video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please go and subscribe. It is home to two really cool designers who really made the most out of the space. The apartment has only 55 square meters and it has been transformed into an absolutely incredible loft. I would say that the main colors in this apartment are stainless steel, so kind of like this cold gray, and of course this beautiful eggshell yellow. And I think that these two colors really harmonize really well together, and everything else is just a beautiful array and range of colors. So I feel like what is really cool is that the designers didn't limit themselves to like a really strict color palette, but you can really see that the way that this apartment was achieved was by playing with design and being bold and trying out something new. As soon as you come in here, you're just amazed by the incredible color palette that is really delicate and really finely nuanced. For example, here we have these nice lemony pastel colored walls, but in between the frame we have a really nice pink to really complementary, add some contrast and add some color. And this is just a really small detail that just really shows you how much effort and how much love has been poured into this apartment throughout the years. And if we have a look at the different shapes that we find in this apartment, a lot of them are really square and simple because we have all of the stainless steel. So often if you have a material, it also translates into a certain design language that you will use. So all of the elements in steel that we have here are very straight. But these straight angles are really broken up, for example, by the seating area and by the round table, and you have a very free-flowing design here that really brightens up the space or opens up the space. You can see that the design is not too strict. For example, the cable from the lamp, instead of hiding it, it was just placed here on purpose to create an organic dynamic shape. And another thing that really breaks up all of the straight lines is the beautiful sofa that we already talked about. It's a very organic and natural shape, unlike other sofas. Some of them are very square. The living room consists of a really open, lofty floor plan. We have an open kitchen niche, and it is made completely from stainless steel. And this just gives it a really sleek and modern finish that isn't too elegant, but that seems very rustic, even though it still has a really high quality. And this is the window. Behind this window, the bathroom is hiding. And the window really frames this place and acts kind of as an artwork. It is framed again by metal steel shelves from both sides. And because they are mounted to the wall, they really give this place a really airy and nice look. And in front of me, we have the second part of the kitchen, which has all the essentials that you need. And what is really cool is that it actually is on rolling things, that you can actually roll it around and move it around and adjust it. And this just really gives you a lot of flexibility. Cool hidden perk, I need to figure out where the light switch is. So as you cook, you have a beautiful lamp, and it just really beautifully frames this part of the kitchen. The other side of the kitchen, we are already in the living room. As I said, this apartment has an open floor plan. You have a lot of rustic materials, for example, the white walls that have been whitewashed and give everything a really rustic feel, or we have the industrial steel pipes that come out from behind. But at the same time, we have a lot of really luxurious designer items, such as these beautiful Vitra chairs or the famous lean rosé Togo sofa chairs, which are just really cool. And they're in this beautiful brown. And you can see, as I said before, the color palette in this apartment is really nuanced. And I think one of the reasons that it is this way is because everywhere you look, you have a lot of art. So the really unique thing about this place is the fact that the father of the designer used to be an artist, or is an artist. And because of this, we have all of these beautiful artworks that really make the apartment one of its kind. And I think that this is what also gives the color palette such a nuanced feel, because everything is really thoughtful. And because of all of the different artworks, we have a lot of different colors. And sometimes the colors are pulled from the artworks and integrated into the apartment, such as the greens we can find again in all of the trees that are here, and they really brighten up the space and give it more of a playful touch. Over here we again have really cool artworks that really frame this wall. We can see that all of the artworks really have a different scale, and nobody really tried to make them fit in and make them fit into the space. You can see that instead of lining them up in one straight line. Everything is like placed really loosely and playful, and this just gives everything a really playful approach. And I think that's what this apartment is really about, playing and having fun. Behind this wall we have the bedroom, and it is also, instead of just having regular doors, the designer took the doors away and basically just created like a beautiful arch that was again also repeated here. And behind the wall we have again a really beautiful artwork. Because of these open arches, the one room really speaks to the other one, and both of them influence with each other, because you always have this like direct contact. You can always look what's behind the wall, and I think this is what really like creates an interesting dialogue. Here as wall materials we have again this cool whitewashed brick that adds this rustic effect, and the rest of the walls are actually painted pink. I think that's really fun. Like I said before, we can already see and peek at the pink from the other side. This arch here is painted yellow, while this square arch here, the inside is painted pink. So again, we have like this really playful approach, and the ceilings everywhere are just kept in the like sleek open concrete. They aren't painted, and this is again something that really creates like this industrial look. What is so cool about this apartment is that everything on the one hand is like meticulously designed throughout every single nudge, and everything is perfect, but at the same time the design feels really effortless. I feel like the designers aren't trying too hard. For example, here, instead of having like some fancy wardrobe, you just have a really simple steel frame where you can hang your clothes. Also, one of my favorites, instead of having a complex shelf, you just have this, basically this artwork with a lot of different pockets where you can just put your things inside. And of course this requires a certain amount of minimalism with what you can collect and with what you can have in your own home. But I think it's just really fun if this is the definition of having a cupboard in your home. And I love it. Or also here, like as I said, one of the materials that are really dominant in this place and are repeated again and again in this apartment is stainless steel. For example, here, it's a bit difficult to show, but here we have these really beautiful, simplistic stainless steel bedside tables. And this is also a really cool example of how something can be really simple and minimalistic and just perfect, but at the same time it's very rustic and it really suits the overall design. Or up here, for example, we have a beautiful designer lamp by Pauli. It is in a special design that is also made from stainless steel. So you can really see that the design language is really kept consistent and coherent. Here again we have two custom cabinets that are basically facing each other, and I think this is just really cool because the cabinet on the one hand acts as a room divider, because this is where the entryway is, and it really zones the loft and creates like spaces inside the big room, but at the same time it's a very functional thing, and it hides all of your clutter away so that you still have this eclectic but still very clean and thoughtful design. Another really cool thing about this apartment is the balcony. So we actually have two balconies, but I will just show you one for now. You get to overlook your street and have a look into the green nature. I think it is quite nice. And also over here, you can see that the designers painted the outside blue, and you have yet another color into the design. And the blue really adds a nice contrast to all of the green colors that we have here, or also to the red brick walls that we have. And also the seating area and the table is really inbuilt, and it is amazing because of how simple it is and how genius it is. The table, you can see, is, I would believe it's custom made. It is just like a steel frame that has been hung over the balcony fence. And another secret gem inside this apartment that is often overlooked, but I think here you can just see how much love and detail was put into this apartment, is in the bathroom. The bathroom is quite small, but well, have a look. The colors in this apartment are very neutral. You have just white and like a mint, like a faded mint color, and this bright yellow shower curtain. And I think it just creates a really fun, bold, and really cool design, especially in a place where usually people, they just forget about the bathroom. They feel like, oh well, nobody will go in there, nobody will pay attention to it. So the brand that was used for these beautiful tiles is called Tile, and I believe they are from Sweden. And you can just see that they are absolutely incredible. So they have a lot of different custom tiles, and ones that really like curve themselves around a corner, or like here. If you have a look, this is just like a crazy, insane attention to detail. Another thing that's quite cool is that some of the custom tiles have like little nudges and edges that go out where you can like put your toothpaste, where you can put your toothbrush. Or for example, over here at the back in the shower, you have a tile that basically just like extends out. So basically it's like convex niche. You can see everything here is perfect. And also the pipe, instead of trying to like hide the pipe, it was enhanced by just painting it bright blue. And I think that that's also really cool. So yeah, if you're in Copenhagen, come and see this eclectic apartment. Thank you. Hi guys, welcome to Interior Insights. Today we are going to look at a beautiful 100 square meter apartment in the center of Hamburg that has been renovated by a couple who bought this apartment when it was basically a ruin. Somebody had lived here for over 80 years and smoked throughout his entire time, so the apartment was completely covered in black, oily nicotine film, and this is how they remodeled it. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe. So as we enter, we can already see that this apartment really just extends into a lot of different rooms, and we have a really spacious layout. The building was built in 1903, which is why we just have this really beautiful old building with a very modern design. So the beauty of these old buildings is the fact that you always have a lot of really beautifully structured old elements, such as the window frames or the door frames or the beautiful plaster moldings in the ceiling or this beautiful rosette on top of the lamps. And another really cool thing about these beautiful historic buildings is the fact that you always have the rooms framed by a lot of windows. And one thing that I didn't know that I think is actually really interesting is that here, where you can see the wall, there actually used to be a window, because if you look closely you can see that actually a window is missing. And this is a phenomena that you actually find in a lot of old historic buildings around Hamburg, because a long time ago people actually had to pay taxes for the amount of windows that they had. So often the owners would cover up 1 or 2 bit windows. And this is the exact same thing that has been done here, that actually a window has been covered up. And because this apartment is so old, you have all of these beautiful old structured architecture, such as these really high ceilings or the really high doors that go all the way up. And I think that it's just really beautiful. So we are already right now in the living room, and as you can see, the colors of the living room are very muted. You have this really beautiful pastel light green that really creates a very calming atmosphere. And you can see that the color of the green walls really correspond beautifully to the trees that we have outside. And you just have this melange of different colored greens, and you can find this green color throughout the design. And what I really love about the way that the color has been used is that not only do the different types of rooms seamlessly flow into each other, like I said, this is the living room and you can just walk right to the kitchen, but also the color stays the same, but it changes slightly. We can see that the design language of this overall, of the living room, really consists of simple square geometry paired with a lot of round accents. So yet again, we have all of these like the square dining table, square cabinets, but then you have all of these like round lamps and organic shapes. And this really like breaks up the design and creates a much more fluffy and light design. This door that really connects the kitchen to the living room has also been completely closed and you weren't able to see anything. And when they bought this place and they uncovered it, they didn't actually know that here you would actually find these beautiful historic doors that are over 100 years old. And I feel like this is just an amazing find if you buy a place and you just find these beautiful historic wooden doors. And you can see all of the historic details. If you have the possibility to live in a beautiful historic place, that doesn't mean that you have to stick to the old architecture, but rather through modern elements and through modern design, you can really enhance the old architecture and yet create something unique and something new. So for example, here, like I said, we have the beautiful Vitra chair, or here we have these really classical, modern, mid-century chairs. Through the contrast of these like old and new pieces, you really have this just beautiful and unique mix that really represents what your personal design taste is like. Or here, another thing I really like, of course, is we have all of these beautiful Werner Panton lamps, and we can find them repeated throughout the space, and they really add like a sense of cohesion throughout the design. So here we have them a really dark green, and they really like frame the table. I love it always if you don't have just one lamp, but if you have 2 or 3 lamps, I feel like repetition is always a really cool thing. Here we have 2 living room lamps. And again, because it's not just one lamp, it doesn't really feel lost, but you have 2 really big, confident lamps that really like take up the space and really own the space. And here the living room seamlessly opens itself up to the kitchen. And I love the fact that they just opened the space up and just created this really symmetrical entrance that really connects the 2 spaces in a very grand gesture, rather than just having like a small door on the side. And then you just have this perfect line, this perfect long kitchen block. So here we have a more darker green that acts as a more neutral and more of a calmer backsplash for the kitchen. Everything in this apartment is really minimalistic and every detail has been thought through. So the owners build a lot of things by themselves, so everything is really built in and you can just really feel that everything has been really properly done. What I love about this kitchen is the fact that it is just one single block that spreads from one side of the wall to the other side of the wall. So it's like a really bold but yet simple statement. And you have 3 beautiful lamps on top of the kitchen that really frame the space. And through this repetition of the lamps, the space feels really like thoroughly thought through. The kitchen countertop is made from sintered stone, which has like this beautiful rough texture, so it feels really warm and comfortable to work with. And you have this open gas stove, which is really cool because these days you don't really have this. We have a lot of really fun posters, such as these 2, that really integrate fruits and vegetables into the kitchen, and you know that this is a space where a lot of cooking and a lot of fun happens. In the kitchen we have just perfect compositions, such as the brown color of the farm table and the pink accent of the Werner Pantone lamp. And again we have all of these like beautiful green accents of the dark green wall or of the plants, and this just creates like a really homey, warm design. And I feel like why this design also works so well is because even though the main color of the kitchen is dark green and the colors used are quite neutral, I feel like all of the light that is used is really warm. It just feels like there's a really nice atmosphere created through the light in the kitchen. When the owners bought this place, they didn't know that underneath the old carpet that used to be inside this apartment, you actually had beautiful spruce wood hiding underneath. And well, they took away the carpet and now they just have this newly, perfectly spruce wood wooden floor that is over 100 years old, and these days it's impossible to get exactly this type of wood. And another thing that's really cool is in the bathroom they actually use the wooden beams to create a unique piece of furniture. Here again we can see that you just have these beautiful door frames that just make the entry and exit from any room really unique and beautiful. So one of the owners has a really big talent for working with wood. He actually created a lot of the pieces, the wooden cabinets that you can find here by himself. Here we have just this beautiful big wooden cabinet that really frames the hallway and yet adds a lot of storage space that just like completely hides away all of your clutter. So if you walk through the hallway, you just have this big airy empty hallway, but because of this giant cabinet that goes all the way to the top, you still have a lot of storage space to hide away everything that you have. And I feel like what makes this feel so airy is the fact that on the one hand it seems really like integrated because it extends all the way to the ceiling. What I love about this hallway is also the use of lighting. So they didn't shy away from, again, framing the hallway with 2 beautiful sconces and add very geometric touches. The kitchen and the living room were both in 2 different shades of green, and here the color switches to a blue. As you move from one room into the next, the color changes and also the mood slightly changes. And if we go right directly to the office is actually beige, but it looks really pink while you're in the hallway because of the contrast. And you can see that once we are actually inside the office, you still have this like warm hue, but it is just really enhanced through the hallway. Here again we have a very inbuilt interior design. Rather than having like a lot of small closets and cupboards and a lot of small pieces, you just have these like big statement pieces that really ground the space. You aren't overwhelmed by your senses because you don't have like 5 small cupboards standing here. And I think that that's always a really good idea. This is a Louis softline sleeping sofa, which is really cool because I feel like it looks really modern and sleek, and it extends into a guest bedroom if you have guests staying over. And over here we have the home office, which is also very minimalist, but you can just see in all of the details how much thought was put into every single piece of furniture that we can find here. In front of me we have a beautiful balcony that extends into the garden. And you just have a piece of outside and nature framed by the big windows. And I feel like balconies, even if it's just a small balcony, they just add so much quality of life to any space because you just have more of a connection to outside. And again, in this room, we have like a really muted color palette, whereas in the living room, we had more of calms, greens and blues. Here we have really dark and warm, muted colors. I feel like all of the rooms in this apartment have their like really personal atmosphere and like personality. So when you enter them, you feel a certain way, you feel a certain sense of coziness, comfortness. Now we will go inside the bedroom. This bedroom again is a vintage dream that you can just wish it was yours. We have this beautiful space of I think around 6 to 6 meters, which is a perfect size for bedrooms. This is what you always learn. As a wall color, you just have this really muted beige that really creates a very like earthy and grounding atmosphere. Again, we have the beautiful dark brown spruce wooden floor and you just feel really, really calm. And what I love, if you have this much space, just have the possibility to create like a really perfectly symmetrical space. So in the center of the bedroom, you have of course the bed. To both sides of the bed, you have simple yet beautiful bedside tables that are framed by these black light sculptures. And I think that this is just really sleek. And opposite of the bed, you have again a perfectly symmetric repetition of two cupboards that have been connected to create like a sideboard. And again, they created a perfect composition that you could just take a picture of and it would be perfect. Another thing I really love is if people manage to incorporate their personal identity and just their personal, basically life story into their designs. One of the owners is a school teacher. So the owner really managed to incorporate her identity of being a school teacher into the design. So here we have a really old vintage school chair, and this is what is used to basically put your clothes at the end of the long day. You just have this like multi-purpose space that again really tells your personal story, and I just really love that if that happens. Over here we have a beautiful lamp. It's called, I think, the lamp by Hay. And again, here we have just a massive inbuilt closet that just really like fades away into the background. For your perception, it almost acts like a wall. You feel like there's nothing hiding here, but it's just really about making simple but really big and profound gestures. Those are what really create like this calming atmosphere. Now we will go inside the bathroom. This is the bathroom. It is very minimalist, clean. The colors are all mostly grays and whites. You just have really beautiful light because of this beautiful sconce. I love it. I once already saw this lamp in the Milan Design Week and I was just obsessed with it because it's really just like a light bulb. So here we have an inbuilt shower that really just hides itself away from the bathroom and that just creates yet a room inside the bathroom. Here we have an oval mirror. I told you before that the owners of this place use the spruce beams of the apartment to create a really unique piece of furniture, and this is it. So here we have these really old spruce wooden beams. Welcome to Interior Insights. I'm Jane, and today we're going to look at a really cool apartment inspired by the 50s and the 70s in the vibrant district of Pauli in the center of Hamburg. Now we're going to go into the living room. This apartment was designed by an editorial designer who lives in Hamburg, and later in the video I will show you how the fact that she is an editorial designer actually influenced the apartment and the design, and I think this is what makes the place so special. So stay tuned. If you like the video, please subscribe. As we come into the living room, you see that it's a very vintage and beautiful design with a lot of elements from the 50s, but also some elements of the 70s. And I think this is just really beautifully integrated. The story of this apartment was that the owner wanted to turn it into an Airbnb, but didn't know how to start. And the first piece that was bought in this apartment is actually this red, orange, dusty colored sofa. And I think this is really beautiful because this really shows you that if you don't know how to create a coherent design, often you need one piece and then you can draw the rest of the inspiration from this piece. And this piece should usually be a big thing like a big sofa, couch or bed. And for this apartment it was this beautiful vintage 70s sofa. Because this is more of a unique and quite bold color and a bold statement, the designer had to basically balance out this color to make it more neutral and to not give it too much weight and to not make this room super colorful. And one way that was achieved is by placing this really graphic, I think, Danish print on top of it. And you can see how beautifully the black and white print really pulls away some of the intense of the color and really like balances out and evens out the room. So this is a cool trick. If you have a color that's too strong in a room, you can just balance it out with more neutral colors. This is really beautiful. And also here, I really love it because you have really strong graphics and really a bold print, but that isn't too overwhelming because it's kept in black and white, but it still gives this like natural, wild nature look. That's really nice. And also here on the side, we have really beautiful sconces that are lamps that are usually mounted onto the top of the wall. And they were actually sourced from a vintage market right down the street. And if you look at the overall design of this wall, it basically just looks like a little piece of art, because rather than just putting up boring lamps that are like on lampstands and they're just standing around the floor, they were actually mounted onto the wall. And this is a really cool trick to really elevate a small space and make it feel really sophisticated and elegant. And these kind of sconces are usually only used in hotel rooms because normal people, I think, maybe they don't know they exist, but I feel like for normal households, people usually scare away from sconces because it's like a big commitment mounting a lamp to a wall. But you can just see how beautifully it integrates into the design and makes it seem really much more sophisticated and yeah, way more beautiful. And I'm really obsessed with it. And also, if you look at the overall geometry of this room, for the base you have a big sofa, and then on top of the sofa you again have a square print that isn't set right in the center of above the sofa, but really offset. And then to complement this big shape, you have a lot of small shapes around it. And you see that they're really just free and intuitively placed. And this gives the minimalistic design a lot of life. It makes it feel really vibrant and really true, because it feels like the lamps were just placed like, oh, I'll put one here, I'll put one there, but really they're in perfect balance with each other. And here we have another 70s table that is really beautiful, and that adds and brings another shape and another dynamic into the room. The black color doesn't add too much excitement and really pares down the overall atmosphere of the room. And that's very nice. And if you look at the overall design, you can see that the shapes are all very different. And I think that this is what makes the design look so coherent and makes it so comfortable, because here you have a square shape, here you have a round shape, and here you have a triangle. This is a really good tip that you can use in your own apartment if you want to make it feel more comfortable or more homey, to just use different types of shapes and not just use, for example, square rectangular shapes. And the same goes for the pillows. The pillows are also all from different types of designs, and you can see that here they have different shapes, they have different sizes, and even here we have a beautiful round pillow, and that just makes the overall design much more fun. Another theme and motive of this apartment, other than the beautiful vintage furniture, is the motive of floral elements. Like we already said before, you have in this big print, you have a lot of like natural graphics. And these graphics are repeated again in the different types of pillows. But of course, you also have real plants, such as this beautiful one. And I think if you design a space, the rule to go to with plants is not to just add as many plants as possible, but to add like one big plant and a small accent plant somewhere else, so that it balances out the room and gives it more life and something unexpected, but that you don't overwhelm the whole design, because I think you can overdo it with plants. But you see this plant has just a beautiful color, and because it's so big and because it has so much space around it, it almost seems like a sculpture in this room. And I think that's just very nice. Another highlight of living in the center of Hamburg is that if you have a balcony and you are really connected to the life outside. So let's go and have a little look outside. Wow. As we step outside, you can directly see that we are in an urban jungle kind of situation, because on the one hand we're in the center of Hamburg and we're like in the streets where all the action happens, but on the other hand you were just looking into a bunch of trees and into nature. And a really smart move that was used here is to pull whatever is outside your window inside your design. So for example, if you're looking at nature and a lot of trees, it's really smart to pull this dark green color or bright green color into your design, because what is directly outside your window always is a part of your design. So if you want to make it more cohesive and more coherent, it makes sense to integrate this color. And this is exactly what was done in this apartment. If you remember, with all of the floral and natural elements, and also the dark green color. And also here you can see the beautiful details, and that they really resemble the natural elements in the shapes of leaves. As I mentioned before, the designer of this apartment is an editorial designer. So this super beautiful sconce in the shape of an R is basically a reference to her love of typography, and we will find this throughout the apartment, and that's really cool. Behind this door is the dining room area, and these doors are just the reason why I love antique and old German buildings, because they're like 100 to 200 years old, and they just give even a small apartment a really grand gesture. It's just beautiful. Here we are. Now we just opened 2 separate rooms from each other and basically let the energy flow through both of them. This is the dining room. As you come inside, you really see directly the Scandinavian details and all of the Scandinavian furniture that was used. And here we can see, if we just analyze the shapes that are found here, is that you have like a round shape as a lamp, and then you again have these round shapes repeated in the shape of the chairs, and this just really balances out the square geometry of the table. And what I think is really cool about this design is the fact that different types of chairs have been used. And behind me we have again a Scandinavian shelf, and it is really cool because it adds a lot of structure. I think these open shelves are always a really good possibility to really showcase your hobbies and loves for the world. If you go through the different types of books, you can see that there are a lot of cookbooks which are actually designed by the designer as well, or a lot of really cool books on typography. And I think that's really beautiful because it really shows the personality of the owner of the space. And then again, we have some plants that are really mindfully placed and not just put all over the place. So they really integrate it and like loosen up the design and the square geometry of the space. And now, my favorite part of the apartment, the typography signs behind me. So these 3, the T, the H, and the X, they actually spell thanks, but they weren't bought at the same time, but rather instead they were collected throughout the years. And actually at the end, the story made sense and it spelled out thanks, but for a very long time I think there was just the T and the H here. And the H actually is a logo from a very old nightclub in Hamburg, and at some point I think the nightclub stopped existing, and yeah, she found it and she got it. And I think that's really cool. The H really carries a little bit of history of Hamburg and of course also of one's own history. And that's really cool. Also here we have the small Pac-Man figures, which is really cool and fun. And if you have a look at the books, they are more or less color-coded. And this just really gives you again this beautiful coherent scenery, rather than just having a lot of books that are not in order and that look like they've just like been put there and nobody actually took time to put them in order. But here, it's just really beautiful. It's very nice. Graphics aren't just the graphics that you see on a piece of printed paper, but they are really how you design a space. And some graphic elements in this room are just, for example, the different types of candles. I mean, look at this blue and white striped candle. Or even this vase is also another graphic element, and you can see that if you would take a picture of this, it would basically translate to a graphic design or a typography. And now we will have a look at the kitchen. The kitchen was opened up to the dining room to create again this seamless transition from room to room. And I think this is a really cool idea. And to make this kitchen seem more substantial, a big slab of wood was placed that basically connects the 2 spaces. And you can see that just using the same material from one space to the next already really creates a connection between them. The kitchen looks really beautiful and unique. It looks like some super expensive designer kitchen, but it's not. The secret is that these door frames are actually from IKEA, and the whole kitchen is actually an IKEA kitchen. But basically to pimp it up and make it and turn it into something special, these coppery, beautiful knobs were added, and they are from a design firm. These 2 doors of the shelf have been replaced by designer shelves. This is basically how a boring kitchen was turned into a really unique and beautiful space. So basically, if you're cooking, you can cook here, but you can still have a direct connection with your guests who are in your living room or with the people who are sitting on your sofa, and you don't feel like you're stuck or like trapped inside a small room, but instead you feel really connected to the world outside. And you have a really spacious kitchen, and even this simple window was transformed into a little artwork because a vase was placed right in the middle with some dried branches, and it really looks like a painting. We have the major #1 Pac-Man. And also here, these are just really small details that really make or break the stay, rather than just having some boring printed out form, the owner decided to make a really beautiful print for everything that you should think of, or like Wi-Fi password and all the things that you need to know. The overall color palette of the kitchen is, again, like the rest of this apartment, very pared down and kept in like a bluish gray, and the natural color of the wood. And of course, here is the bathroom. It's a little bit small, but it has everything you need, and the tiles are kept in the same vintage design like the rest of the apartment. Hi guys, welcome to Interior Insights. I'm Jane, and today we are going to look at a former bakery that has been transformed into a really artsy loft by a street art artist who lives here. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you a real artwork just around the corner, so stick to the video and watch until the end. Come in. The loft itself is located in Leipzig, in the west of Leipzig, which is a city in Germany that formerly used to belong to the DDR, in one of the coolest districts in the west of Leipzig called Plagwitz. As we enter the loft, we are just warmly greeted by a big plant family that lives here. The artist Kuba, who owns this apartment, loves plants, and they give the apartment just an absolute beautiful feeling. Formerly, this place used to be a bakery, so this place really entails a long and charming history. And after this place was used by a lot of artists and was just used as different art studios, and because of this, we have a lot of paint stains that you can see on the still original tiles. And because of the industrial character of the loft, the stains are part of the history and part of the apartment, so they weren't removed, but they're just there. And they are a little throwback into the history of this apartment. As for the walls, they are held in this very rustic, shabby style. We can see that the wallpaper has been stripped off the walls and that it wasn't covered up again. And this is just what gives this loft this just old and historic character. It has a really beautiful patina. We can see some pencil marks, or we can see some splashes of color, and it just perfectly portrays the history of this place. To underline this industrial character, also the shelves are kept in a very industrial style, and they are just literally just white painted metal beams, and they give this apartment its structure. The color palette in this apartment is held in a lot of neutrals. We have this rich patina of the beige walls. They give the apartment the perfect underground. Then we have all of these beautiful green plants that add pops of color and give this room a really magical and charming atmosphere. And I love the plants. We can see that the room itself is kept quite minimal. We don't have a lot of things standing here. We have an old vintage sofa chair that is also really broken and that has a lot of marks and a very rich patina. Every direction we look at, we can see that an artist is living here. For example, over here, we actually have an artwork that is literally just one gigantic piece of canvas that hasn't been uncovered. And it's simple and quite fun. Or above me, we have all of these beautiful psychedelic surrealist paintings and sketches that have been collected all over the years. Or as we came in, we had this beautiful yellow piece of artwork that was also one of the older works of the artist. And you can just see that the person who lives here is living and breathing art. If you haven't yet subscribed, go and subscribe. And it's little personal details like this that really create a story in an apartment. As you come in, enter a completely different world. Over here we have a gigantic glass table where you can have dinner, and it is facing this gigantic window. And the gigantic window is framed by a lot of plants. And the reason why we have such a big window is because this used to be a bakery, and you had just all of the passengers, people walking by, look in, see the delicious bread and come in. And now when they look in, they see an artist making his art. And as we look outside, we are facing a beautiful, gigantic red historic brick facade, and it just adds a pop of color to this utterly monochromatic design. We have two big industrial lights above us that lighten up the space. The artist really made the plants the show of the apartment. All around us, we have spots of big and small green plants. And they are what make this place so enchanting and create almost a jungle atmosphere inside a city. And what I love is that here we actually have a shelf that is made and dedicated just to the plants. And we can see that it is also in this industrial style, and it is just a black frame. And you have all of these different plants standing inside, and they are growing around the shelf, and they're owning the space and making it their own. So you have plants that are growing around the door frames, and they're growing down the shelves. I just love these little enchanted details. Also over here, we can see again that this shelf is also dedicated just to the plants, and we again have them growing all the way around and down, and they beautifully frame the architecture and the structure of the architecture that we have here. Now let's go inside the bedroom. So these stairs were made by the artist himself. Walking up the stairs into this bedroom is almost kind of like a little fairy tale experience. You enter an almost completely white bedroom. This white fabric that has just been draped over the bed, and this just creates a very luxurious and a very inviting atmosphere, and you feel right at home. These doors are still original from when this building was built, and they're just heavy wood doors that have been painted white. And what I love is that you just have all of these different details that make up the door. Everything in the bedroom is vintage, just like in the rest of the apartment. We have two gigantic cabinets made from old vintage wood. They've had a long history because we can see a lot of the marks on the wood. And this is just something I really love about furniture that has been made from real materials, because you can see the story that the furniture went through and everything that it has experienced. And it's not like you're just buying a plastic chair and it stays a perfectly new plastic chair forever. Over here we have a bedside lamp that is from the 70s, and it just throws this beam of light diagonally onto the wall. It just creates this visual tension in the room. And of course, what I love about the room the most is just this simple white piece of fabric that has just been draped all over the bed, and it just feels like you're sleeping underneath the clouds. Another thing I like about this apartment is the fact that this corner, for example, has a lot of functions. So down here we have a cabinet, so you can actually also sit down, and there's kind of like a sofa situation that has been created. Or above me in the back, the space was used to put a hanging rod for hanging your clothes or putting up your jacket. So actually, even though the space isn't the biggest, you have all of the functions that a very big apartment would have. Show you the kitchen. So we go up these stairs, and as we enter the kitchen itself is kept in the same rustic style like the rest of the apartment. And we can see that nothing has been covered up. We have all of these old bits of paint that is coming off, and you just have this historic and rustic charm. And behind me we have a gigantic black and white poster of the face of a woman. These big graphic oversized elements are what give a place like this their personal historic charm, their personality, and almost a sense of attitude. And I believe that this is a reference to all of the street art that the artist is making outside. Because the space isn't too big, the kitchen itself is quite simple, and because we don't have enough space, we have a very cool space-saving solution that is this table. So this table actually is much higher than a regular table would be, and currently it is just kind of like a sideboard, but you can actually open it up. And now you have a perfect table for drinking a glass of wine or eating your cereal in the morning, and I believe it's also healthier to actually stand rather than sit. Other than that, everything is kept very open and in a very rustical, raw style. Over here we can go into the bathroom. The bathroom is white and minimal and has all the necessities that you need. The special piece in this apartment is this beautiful old locker It is made from red metal and it adds a pop of color in this otherly white bathroom. It's covered in a lot of stickers and it just again takes the outside and the street life and the street art into the apartment. And we can see that nature and architecture really just became one in this place. Hi guys, welcome to Interior Insights. I'm Jane and we are standing in a historic post office from 1905 that has been transformed into a beautiful, luxurious suite that I will show you today. If you like clean and minimal design and just a historic charm that has been kept throughout the design, this video is for you. If you like the video, please make sure to subscribe. The apartment itself is located in Bad Bevensen, which is a very small town in the south of Hamburg in Germany. And this town has just really kept its historic charm and its old architecture. And this was formerly the post office in the Emperor times. Like I said, the building was built in 1905 and it just has a beautiful brick facade that was kept. And the inside was completely remodeled and redone in 2015. And this is what we have today. Because this building is over 100 years old, we have these incredibly high ceilings and we have this beautiful old historic architecture. Unfortunately, throughout the 20th century, the building inside has been completely destroyed and all of the beautiful historic moldings have been taken away. But it has been beautifully redone into a modern, sophisticated suite. So this is the master bedroom and you can see that I'm being blinded by the beautiful afternoon light. And you just have this gorgeous light in here and we can again see that everything has been kept in beautiful neutrals. We have this soft grayish beige bed that has also been covered in fabric and it feels very warm and very welcoming. In front of the bed, this is also a very traditional thing to do. We have this bench that has also been covered in a soft textile beige and it just feels very luxurious and you can almost feel the spirit of the post office and at the same time you still have this very modern and clean design. The overall layout of the room is very classical. We have the bed standing in the center of the room accompanied by 2 bedside tables and really unique lamps. Let me show you. So this is a small situation that I love because these lamps are essentially just light bulbs that give off this beautiful soft ray of light. And they are sconces, but they are not actually real sconces because proper sconces would be mounted to the wall. But here we just have basically regular light bulbs that are hung on top of a knot by a string. And this again just creates beautiful lighting that is very versatile and it doesn't take up any space on the bedside table. I love it. To my left, we have this grand, majestic windows that are still historic and that are original from 1905. They have been painted white. And what's so incredible about this suite is the fact that when we look outside, you have the beautiful colors of the autumn and the bright blue sky when you have it looking in and flowing inside the room. For the window tops, we have these beautiful big slabs of stone that are made from a stone called Jura, which is also very regional and it's not that expensive, but it looks very rich. Below me, we have radiators that are actually still original from the 30s, from when I told you throughout the 30s to the 50s, the office building was completely emptied and all of the beautiful historic moldings were destroyed and these radiators were installed. And I love the fact that the designers kept them just to show the history and the overall transition of everything that this building went through. This side is framed by floor-to-ceiling curtains in a warm beige color, and you can see that even though the room itself, you could say it's completely white, but actually the color palette consists of delicate nuances of white to very soft beige. So this actually isn't proper white, but it's this very soft beige color. The old handles of the windows have been replaced with modern ones that still go with the old Parisian flair and the old style of the building. And they are very delicate, and you can see that the same design has been used as the door handles throughout the apartment, and they just create this very cohesive style. Over here we have a little working table or a makeup table, however you want to use it, and we have a big round mirror that generously opens up the room even more. And we can see again that this layout and this composition doesn't take up any visual space because the table is made from glass and it is essentially just the metal frame. So it's very light. And even the lamp itself is basically invisible because you just have this beautiful glass silhouette and it's very delicate and it just goes with the overall neutral minimalist design of this place. Over here we have a small seating area. We have a lounge chair and a beautiful thick knitted blanket that has been thrown over, and it just creates this very generous atmosphere. Behind me we have the wardrobe, and you can see that the beautiful moldings of the wardrobe give it structure and again create this almost historic appearance. As I told you, this design really stands out for the way that lighting has been used to frame the architecture and to further enhance the design. And again, to frame the symmetry of the room and to really visualize it, we have two sconces placed on both sides that beautifully give off lighting to both the top and the bottom. And this again, sconces are always a great way to visually divide a room further. Oh, and of course, a beautiful little moment that we have over here is this incredible calfskin carpet that again creates this rich and prestigious design, because I believe that the emperors of the former times always had these rich furs lying around or these lambskins draped over their sofas. So this is the living room. You can see that the color palette is very muted and we have these rich neutrals, and I feel like this design really shows that neutrals layered with neutrals layered with neutrals again can indeed create a very rich and appealing design. Behind me we have the dining room area, and we just have this beautiful massive wooden table, and we can see that the wood itself has been whitewashed to give it just this ancient, rustic, almost Parisian charm. We have 4 white metal chairs that again go with a very neutral color palette, and we can see that we have this rattan that is very lightweight and doesn't add a lot of weight to a room, but that just visually keeps everything very light. Other than that, we have beautiful autumn decor added, such as these candles or these little branches of the last green trees that we find on the outside. And we can see that in the living room area, the color palette stays the same, but to just create a more relaxed and moody design, all of the colors are a little bit darker. So we have a little composition of 3 different sofa tables, and they are all painted in black, but they vary in height, and they just give this room a sense of movement. So it's always very good if you have a very open floor plan. When you have a lot of big pieces of furniture standing in one room, it's always a good idea to use a lot of smaller pieces of furniture and to group them to just create this difference in scale. Over here we again have this rattan chair, and it looks like a beach chair, and it just gives you this very fun and summery vibe. And as I told you, the attention to proper lighting in this apartment is incredible. Over here we again have not just 1, but 2 very unique standing lamps, and you can see that they again give this apartment a new level of sophistication. Also with the color, it's great that not just one element inside this apartment is black, but that actually 2 of them are black, and they really create a zone and a whole nother vibe in this area. On the back wall we again have this little moment where a white painting has been paired and put on top of a white wall. You would think that it's boring putting a white painting on a white background. Because of the beautiful structure of the crunched up paper, this creates a very rich design and a very interesting composition. The biggest takeaway we can take from this design is that sometimes it's not the colors that create the magic moment, but sometimes it's really just all about the textures. And this is just what I love about this place, because we have so many different textures. Below we again have a rattan bench, and it just really finishes the composition. When we look outside, we can have a look at another beautiful brick building that is standing opposite of us. And I think it's amazing that it's standing there, because it just makes us see the material that is the exterior facade of this apartment. And I feel like it just gives us more of a connection to what is outside. Over here, we have yet again another beautiful little composition. We have a white sideboard with a lot of straight lines. And to break up the straight lines and to create a sense of dynamic and movement inside this composition, we have all of these differently round and organic shapes placed on top. So we have these beautiful vases, and again you can see they're gray. They aren't a very bold color accent, but they just have this incredible patina and textured surface to them. Behind me we have the kitchen niche, and the kitchen niche is tucked inside a little corner, and this is where we have the kitchenette, and we can see that an almost bluish gray has been chosen as for the kitchen panels. And when we have a look at the handles, we can see that they are very similar to all of the handles that we have at the window frames or at the doors, and this is just the consistency that I was talking about. Other than that, we have a wooden countertop, and the top of the kitchen panels are covered in glass. There you again have this small Parisian kitchen design. Of course, we have these very dark and bold and graphic tiles that have been added as a backsplash, and they just create this very strong visual interest. What's so special about this apartment is the fact that through the use of decor, this story and history is accentuated. And when we have a look at these two beautiful candle holders, you can just see their classical design and shape. And actually, when I look at them, I think of these small things that you use to store salt and pepper. I think that that's quite an interesting reference. When we go inside the bathroom, here we have a very generous, open, minimalistic layout. Over here we have a vanity that is floating. So we again just have this very lightweight design, and the room doesn't feel swamped with all of these big furniture pieces that are standing around. For the color palette, we have soft gray tiles that really make up and frame this room. And again, we have this lamp situation, and these soft lamps that are basically just big light bulbs. They always give off this beautiful soft lighting because they spray the light in every single direction. It just creates a very ambient atmosphere. Other than that, we have a small mirror, and over here we have a walk-in bathroom, and you can see that sometimes less is more. Rather than visually cluttering the space with a shower door, we just have a one open room layout, and this just again creates this very simple, majestic design. One of the biggest perks of the suite is the fact that we have a gigantic terrace, and in the summer, and you just have this big extension of your living space, and it almost makes you feel like you're living in a house. Let me show you. So this is all yours. And yes, and when you come out here, again, you can just see the beautiful historic brick facade of the former post office, and you can just ponder at how this little town in Germany was in 1905 and when everything still was very different. Thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you like it and learned something new. If you haven't yet subscribed, please go to subscribe. And actually, I also filmed another video in this former post office, and that is in the attic. There is a beautiful, luxurious penthouse suite. See you next week.